Hello, Black Healing Matters family. This is Danielle here at the Black Healing Matters podcast, where we offer you ideas to hopefully move you one step closer to your healing. And today is a great day, beautiful day here in South Korea. It is a wonderful, hopefully, beginning of the spring. Hopefully, winter doesn't come back and snap us back into the below zero temperatures. But nonetheless, I'm hoping, right? It could happen. And that's all right, though. And so, this is the time of year when many people are getting out. They're, shedding their winter coats and, starting to get a little happier and a little spring in their step. But for some of us, if you're battling mental illness, you may not necessarily be feeling it this season. And if that's the case, I think many times, especially in our community, in the Black community, we often misunderstand or really have no clear understanding of the difference between sadness and depression. And so on this Mental Health Monday, we're going to talk about the difference between sadness and depression, how they can be distinguished, and what's really the important distinguishing factors. So, this article comes from the Psychology Today website. I'll link it in the show notes so you can look at it if you like and read, which I do strongly recommend if this is a topic of importance to you or any family members you may have who you think, possibly are depressed. And so in the article, it states, and I'm reading verbatim, sadness is a normal human emotion. We've all experienced it and we will experience it again. Sadness is usually triggered by a difficult, hurtful, challenging, or disappointing event, experience, or situation. In other words, we tend to feel sad about something. This also means that when that something changes, our emotional hurt fades away. When we've adjusted or gotten over the loss or disappointment or sadness. However, depression is an abnormal emotional state, a mental illness that affects our thinking, emotions, perceptions, and behaviors in pervasive and chronic ways. When we are depressed, we feel sad about everything. So, just to give you a little contrast, again, sadness is a feeling about something in particular. Rather, depression is a sadness about everything. Depression does not necessarily require a difficult event or situation, a loss, or a change in circumstances as a trigger. In fact, it often occurs in the absence of any such triggers. People's lives on paper might be totally fine. They would even admit that this is true themselves, yet they still feel horrible. Depression colors all aspects of our lives, making everything less enjoyable, less interesting, less important, less lovable, and less worthwhile. Depression saps our energy, motivation, and ability to to experience joy, pleasure, excitement, anticipation, satisfaction, connection, and meaning. All your thresholds tend to be lower. You're more impatient, quicker to anger and get frustrated, quicker to break down, and it takes you longer to bounce back from everything as well. So, you can see here there's a clear difference between depression and sadness, and obviously that real distinction that they're making in this article is that depression kind of colors your entire life. And it affects all of your emotions, your senses, and your overall experience. Whereas sadness is really just a reaction to some direct stimulus in your life, whether it be a situation or a change or a loss of some sort. Okay, so it goes on. This article goes on, which it's a really good article. Again, I recommend reading it. Um, Even if you are not depressed, these are things that after reading this article, to be honest, I was able to see a lot of these things in the people around me. And I realized, wow, okay, they weren't just sad, they were really depressed, So this can be really helpful in even dealing with friends or family members who you see are having a tough time, to be able to discern whether this is depression and they need to see somebody, or if they're just sad. That's a really important thing to do, to be able to support yourself, whether it's you and or your friends and family members. Okay, so it talks about a few true symptoms of depression in this article, and I'll read through a few of them. There are 9 of them. I'm not going to read all 9 of them, but I'll take a few for you, okay, that I thought were interesting. So, number 1, a depressed or irritable mood most of the time. Number 2, a loss or decrease of pleasure or interest in most activities, including ones that had been interesting or pleasurable previously. And that's significant. So, if you notice someone is not excited about the things that used to really light them up, that's a red flag. Significant changes in weight or appetite. Let's see, disturbance in falling asleep or sleeping too much. So, not enough sleep or too much sleep. So basically, out of balance. Feeling slowed down in your movements or restless most of the day. And the list just goes on and on and on. And it ends, the last item on the list is having thoughts of dying or suicide. And so, if you or anyone who has confided in you are experiencing these symptoms, and these are symptoms of true depression, then yes, I believe it is time to see somebody. Getting help is not something that anyone should be ashamed of. Seeing a professional is just like seeing any other doctor. And we are blessed to be living and during a time where we can actually get access to health professionals, mental health professionals, to help us through these tough times, because, you know, our ancestors didn't have that option, and they just had to keep trucking along. And so they taught us that. I know, for me, my grandmother, my parent, they taught me to just kind of push through and power through it. But the truth is, we don't have to. And if we're going to live free and live long and healthy, then we shouldn't take on that burden. I mean, if we're depressed, we have our burdens, but to also take on the burden of having to carry that and somehow fix yourself is more than anybody should have to handle in 2018. So, on that note, Black Healing Matters family, I love you. On this Mental Health Monday, stay blessed. Take care of yourself and those you love. Black Healing Matters.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.